It's Friday, December 22nd, 2023. System that have been the last couple shows, so we'll see. Well, whatever, it will. The show will still come out. I mean, it just might take a lot of work, and I might have to just reinstall my entire system. But we won't worry about that yet, because in the present moment of recording, I don't know if it's going to happen or not. Therefore, we'll just keep doing what we usually do, which is to open up with our shill segment, where I tell you that you can go to patreon.com/Ozone Nightmare to support the show using the Patreon supporting platforms.
Or you can go over to the second there.
Well, yeah.
Would you like to support the show?
Oh, Moneypenny. Oh, I didn't know there was a Luga in that part of you. Okay, so the other place you can go is the show homepage, and you can use the blocks on the right side to do various things, such as clicking the one that has the PayPal logo to support using that. You can click on the little book with the bookmark, and that will take you to Lando's Amazon author page. You can click on the one that has a skull. That will take you to my artwork links. And there is also a YouTube link if you would like to. Our Baldur's Gate content is now up. Ooh, God.
Really?
Yes, the first, well, by now, the first two of our videos. Somebody actually said, because I must have said in that first one,
yeah,
I must have said something about whether we would stick with it or not, because I got a comment saying, "Oh no, you should stick with it," and I went, "Oh no, we played it all the way. we figured it out eventually. They're not all as catastrophically bad as these first two or three." So, because I think that first one is the one where I blew the whole room up, which is what I used for the intro, where I just exploded the room.
That was one of the best parts.
It was. Oh, it was. And I did, by the way, I couldn't remember until I pulled all the stuff off the PlayStation.
Yeah.
I did record our fail run on the Netherbrain where we lost and Karlak got turned into a squiddy.
Oh, yeah. So, it was awful. Oh, yes. That was the worst.
So that's there. That's I basically had that just in its entirety, that entire battle. It's about 40-something minutes. Just that I think I said, fighting the Netherbrain. We lost. And then the next one is fighting the Netherbrain. We won, So, yeah. So you will be able to see that. Spoiler, I guess, that we bombed one of the runs, since we bombed
whatever.
What?
We bombed a bunch of runs. That's what happens.
And I think some of them are in there. I think I kept some when they were entertaining.
Yeah, the problem is that there's runs in that game where you're like an hour into the run and suddenly it occurs to you, oh, we can't win this. And there's other ones where you're like, you're half an hour in and you're like, oh, we're fucked, we're done. And then you're like, we'll stick with it. And then by some miraculous, chance, you pull through.
Yeah.
So it goes up both ways.
There were a few where I know you can hear me saying, well, we're going to lose this one anyway, so who cares? And then we end up winning. So there are those. Not many of them, but there are.
That's very funny. Those are up now. Yeah. Well, let's see what kind of commentary you get. I'm always curious because I don't watch gameplay, so I get kind of confused by the. But it's because I like to play games. So.
Well, it's a rare case where we're playing a game that is still very, very high up in the zeitgeist of pop culture. There's still a lot of discussion. Normally, we come to games very late.
Yes.
Or we're playing games that nobody really cares about, like, Breakpoint. But this is a rare case where we started playing it a month after it came out, which we don't normally jump on most massively popular games early on. Normally we don't, but this one
had
the advantage of being out
for
a month.
while. Yeah,
right. And that's why we did it. So rare case.
Oh well, I have an interesting question for those who listen. I'd be curious if there would be any listeners who would be interested in reading early material of mine and giving me their review.
Oh, I guarantee I can think of 2 people immediately.
Because I'm about, what am I, about 200 pages? I think I'm about 200 pages. Maybe 180 into my my next book. And I'm at that point now where I'm happy with it, but that's always dangerous. You know when you're really happy with something and you're like, you know what? That could be bad. So I thought I might, because you read the first part of it and you said that you almost forgot I was writing it because the action kind of took over so quickly. So we'll see.
Yes.
But yes, if anyone is interested to basically read early material, and give me their I'm not looking for copy editing or anything like that. I'm looking for somebody to just read it and give me a sense of, their sense of the narrative, their sense of, things that they see as, their general book review. I'll go with that, on unfinished work. So if anyone's interested, I guess email Joe and he'll pass you along to me. Right?
Yes, send a self-addressed stamped envelope to the following P.O. Box address within the next 2 years. God. Thank you.
Yeah, next 2. Let's see the snail's pace that I'm functioning. So I have something that popped up that I want to talk about because it depressed the fuck out of me. I have some reviews that are not depressing, but I started doing my did I mention this in the podcast? Yeah, I think I mentioned in the last podcast. I basically life has gotten somewhat back to a normal pace for me, and I'm back to listening to college courses while I work out, which gets my brain going like crazy. And now that college courses are back in my listening repertoire, I listen to them a lot more. It's very funny how that works. Like if I don't work out with college courses, I don't think to listen to them at other times in my day. Whereas if I do listen to them while I work out, all of a sudden I'll be like in the car and be like, I should throw out a college course. So I'm in the kind of the finale. I don't want to call it the finale because that's ominous, but I'm in the finale of American history. I've just gotten past Vietnam, right? So we're kind of in the more modern. But the guy who does this particular course is done by 2 different people. And the guy who does the second half of the course, he does this thing where he kind of he has lectures where he does like these long, he kind of gives you like a long bit of history where he gives you this idea of what was going on into a certain time period. And then he goes back and he has specific lectures about, like little things in there, so like at one point he breezed over Vietnam and I was like, that's it. And then there was a whole course about Vietnam. So, but in there he talks about the women's equality movement going back to like, the 50s and the, up to now, right? How women have kind of gone for equality. And, I am a strong supporter of women's equal rights and women's equal pay. I was raised by women, like, by my mother and her mother and her mother's 2 sisters. So like I had all these women around me growing up, and my whole thing was I never understood why there was so much misogyny, which is hilarious because the Cuban culture is very misogynistic, right? And I am surprised that it didn't get into me. But this course gets heavily into feminism, right? Now there's people who think that feminism is a bad word. And I don't think it is. I think that feminism is good. My problem with anything is that anything can be taken to an extreme where it becomes dangerous, where it goes too far. You know what I mean? Like there was a feminist movement at one point in like the 60s where they thought that being a lesbian was the natural state of being for women because men were naturally the enemy. I was telling my wife about this, and she goes, "So what's the end goal of feminism? The end of the species?" And I was like, I don't think they got that far with it. But in there, I learned about this theory. Now, the worst part of this is that I can't remember the name of the woman who came up with the theory, because I learned about it like a couple days ago, and then I've done like 3 courses since. So like it kind of got bowled over, whereas the theory itself.
Which course is this one, so I can link to it?
All right, so this is called. Yes, I know it is. Hold on one second. I got the link right here. This is the. Oh wait, hold on.
I meant to ask you before I started, and I completely.
No, that's fine. This course is called. Where are you bastard? History of the United States. That's it. It's by the Learning Company. Learning Company, Teaching Company. They have like different names, but it's the same company.
I've got it.
Yeah.
It's called The History of the United States.
History of the United States. Yeah, it's 84 lectures. Apparently, if you sit down and listen to the whole thing nonstop, it'll take you 1.7 days. That's fascinating. Wow. Okay. Yeah, it's pretty long. Every course is about a half hour long. And jam-packed with information. So hold on. I'm going to see if I can find the name of the woman before I get into this, because it is, once we get into it, we're not going to...
This is part of the great courses, right?
Yes, it's part of the great courses. Okay. That's what it is. Great courses. Yeah.
Got it.
Damn, I can't... Okay, I will get the name of this woman for next time. But there is this theory. It is the caveman rape theory. God. So the idea was that this one woman's feminist theory was that that the first you have the early man, you have early woman, and at some point the first woman said no to the first man, and the first man said fuck that and raped her, right? There was the first rape, at which point after that cave woman was always aware that cavemen had the capability of rape. So that cave woman was always afraid, because if you were a caveman, you could be a rapist. Now this translates into this idea that in the modern age, all men live under the umbrella of the power of the rapist, which is to say that a woman can look at any man and have the fear that he could rape her, because a man can be a rapist. And therefore, you as a man, even if you're the nicest guy in the world, never had an evil thought in your mind, you are still living off of the implied threat that is provided to you by all the rapists that have come before you. Right?
Sure.
Now, I hate this theory because I'm not a bad guy, nor have I ever thought about raping a woman.
Well, all right. I want to make sure I understand this.
Yeah.
So that means today.
Yeah.
That a woman looks at you and is supposed to automatically assume you're a rapist. Is that the idea?
No, it's not to assume that you're a rapist, but that there's always an implied masculine threat.
Okay.
That there's always going to be a level of fear because you are the caveman who has the capability of rape.
Okay.
And your type, your species has raped so many times before. Therefore, there's always that you basically live with the implied threat because you are male, right?
So basically, men have a default capability.
Yeah,
because this woman's idea of feminism is that. I'm just trying to make sure I understand.
No, this is one of her theories about basically the state of men and women.
Just human beings in general is
that
women all have an inherent sense, almost a race memory of the fact that men.
Yeah.
Okay.
That there is a danger, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Now I hate this because, like I said, I am not a bad guy, nor have I ever thought about that, and but the thing that sucks about it is that It doesn't matter if you're a good guy. You can't escape it. In this theory, because someone has done it, you are living inside of the group, the I don't even call it like the group power of threat that is created by one man being a rapist. Therefore, you all have the capability. And I was really annoyed. And then I brought it up to my wife, and I was complaining about it. And I said, it's funny because in a weird way, it makes me think of Adam and Eve, how, women are in the Bible are like the original sinners, right? Because Eve basically ate from the apple, and then the apple, or the fruit of knowledge, and then she basically got Adam to do it, and that's like the first sin. And my wife is like, yeah, she goes, that's your whole rape theory in reverse on women, except using religious sin instead of rape as the issue. And that fucked me up even more, because I thought about that and I was like, Jesus Christ, she's right. Invoking Jesus Christ. Because growing up, when I grew up in a religious, state, yeah, you learn that women are basically part of the original sin, that it's Eve's fault that we're all fucked, right?
Now let's explain, because there may be people who don't know what the story is. So basically, in the traditional biblical version of the creation myth, the reason that, okay, correct me if I'm wrong, because I may get some of this wrong.
All right, so God basically,
the basics of it is, weren't people expelled from paradise?
Not people. So if you go with a lot of the closest we can get is essentially that God created Adam and Eve. He created two individuals in his garden, right?
Yeah.
And that everything was perfect and balanced in the garden.
And he said you could do anything you want, but just don't eat for fruit of the tree of knowledge.
You cannot eat from the tree of knowledge.
That's it. Okay.
Right?
I remember enough of them.
And now the piece that nobody reads is, you cannot eat from the tree of knowledge lest ye become gods like us. Right? That's the actual line from the Bible, which has always fucked me up, because I'm like, gods, lest they become gods like us? What the fuck is that about? What gods are we talking about for a monotheistic religion? Anyway, we'll leave it for now. So there is a serpent in the garden who is a sly talker. Now, there are versions of this story where the serpent is Lilith, right? And as it goes, Lilith was the first wife that God created for Adam in the garden, except she was basically too, for lack of a better word, she was too uppity. She was too independent. And God didn't like that, because Adam was supposed to be in charge, and he essentially got rid of her. But it's all very weird. It's all very vague. It's not in the Bible, you know what I mean? So it's not considered to be a canon to the series. But so there's this serpent, and the serpent was like, you should really eat from the tree of knowledge. It's so cool. Everything's so great. And the serpent convinces Eve to eat the tree. So Eve eats the tree, and she's like, holy shit, like, this is amazing. I suddenly understand all these things. And she convinces Adam to do it. And Adam does it, at which point they both suddenly realize that they're naked. And when God shows up, he sees that they are covering themselves, and he says, shit, you guys ate from the tree of knowledge. I can tell because you suddenly have shame. You're covering yourselves. At which point, before they could eat from the tree of life and become immortal, lest you become gods like us, he kicked them out of the Garden of the Garden of Eden, and cast man out into the world. Right? That's the story.
Okay, so let's explain what's happened in the last 42 minutes or so, whatever. I don't actually remember how long it's been.
Now, oh man, you sound so weird weird now.
Yeah.
This is great.
Yeah, this is a weird show. So something has happened that I have finally been able to verify is Skype. Skype has shit the bed, and it started destroying the audio on my end to the point where Lando just dropped out entirely. And I was convinced that it was the Mac. I really was. I was telling him, I'm like, no, this is my Mac. This system has fucked me somehow. And I was actually pulling backups in the background as I was like restarting things because I'm like, okay, I'm going to wipe this system tomorrow because I can't have it not work. And then, did I have the idea for FaceTime or did you? One of us had the idea. Well,
You had the idea for FaceTime.
Well, I thought, well, there's one way to verify.
I had the stupid idea to run Skype.
Well,
at the same
time. Well, because we ran into a second problem, which I'm going to try to iron out, but whatever. So essentially, we need to find an alternative to Skype. Skype is no longer viable because this cannot be the permanent solution, what we're doing now. So what we are doing now, as just a matter of information, is we are running both FaceTime and Skype simultaneously. We're on 2 calls. We have Skype on mute because...
No, nothing's on mute.
Well, yeah, you're right, because the recording unmuted.
Yeah, nothing's on mute because some certain audio comes through on FaceTime and certain audio comes through...
The sound effects. The sound effects is the sticking point. Everything on FaceTime was golden, except Lando could not hear the sound effects.
And what's really crazy is that Joe sounds like a transformer.
And so does Lando because we're both getting double audio.
But we're getting like double like metallic audio. So literally, it sounds like Joey's like.
Yeah, it's like somebody's It's like I'm talking on a pipe that's reflecting against another pipe. So we're gonna see how this goes. I think this will be stable because we haven't had any chop the whole time. So it would be very weird to have it suddenly come up because I think my suspicion is that FaceTime is dominating in terms of the system, Skype.
This is the most broke ass I think we have ever been at.
Yeah, but the nice part is,
but we're gonna get it done.
Not only that, but if I can just figure out why you can't hear the sound clips, then we'll be fine with FaceTime because it's free and we can use it. And actually, it was fine.
But you know what? I just discovered something very cool. I actually don't look that bad on FaceTime.
No, your video was very nice. Yeah.
Between my weird lights and all the weird art around my head, I actually have kind of an entertaining environment.
Well, if we were ever going to do video, I would just use my blue screen, and then I would have a fantastic background because I know how to do that.
There you go. Yeah, you're right.
So anyway, that's to you, the listener.
So
you just heard Lando finish talking about the biblical expulsion from paradise. I heard none of that.
Yes. Yeah. So the last thing I was talking about before Joe and I basically went into a time warp for an hour. Mm-hmm. Was we were explaining what the story of Adam and Eve was for our non-Christian listeners, and how basically the tree, all that stuff. You just heard it. So God kicks Adam and Eve out of the Garden of Eden, and basically it is always considered that it's a woman's fault that man was banished from the Garden of Eden. And it's kind of like the original sin, right? And thus it gives men grounds to basically be like, fuck you, women, you got us kicked out of paradise, right? Right. And so the idea is that every woman carries with her the sin of Eve, right? And what I realized is that is not unlike this idea that every man carries the sin of rape, right? And when my wife was saying how like they seem similar, and my brain finally put those two ideas together, I was like, holy shit. I was like, that is awful. That is awful at every level for all of us. That it's kind of like it's the whole mutually assured destruction. On one end, you've got the Bible and history basically enabling men to look at women and say, we're better and you got us kicked out of paradise, and so you're always secondary to us. Whereas you have this feminist theory that basically says, you know what? You all feed off of the same imbued threat energy off of the fact that we can be that men have raped, right? And for a moment, you know what it did? It actually made me feel, or at least get closer to understanding what women must feel like in that position, because I was annoyed with that position. I was annoyed sitting there going, yeah, but I'm not a rapist. And it's the same woman going, yeah, why are you shitting on me? I didn't get you kicked out of your imaginary fucking garden. You know, like there's no reason why you should shit on me. So it made me sad, and I wanted to bring it up because it is such an interesting idea. The fact that this feminist idea, which pisses me off, is so similar to this idea from the Garden of Eden of Eve's original sin, and how basically women have been living with this theory for, hundreds of years. I'm pissed off because I just found out about this theory from the 60s. So it makes me feel bad. It makes me feel bad that any of it's there. It makes me feel bad that we hate on ourselves the way that we do, and that we treat each other so poorly. That we treat yeah. I just wanted to bring it up because it's always fascinating to learn about these things that are out there. And right before the show, I was talking to Joe about something else, and I said, now I know more. Now what do I do with this? And that's the thing. It's like, now I know more. Now what do I do with this? And it's like, well, I try not to be a bad person, and I try to treat women equally, and I try to lead through example.
And by the way, that's not the only example. There's Delilah cutting Samson's hair, thereby robbing him of his power.
Yeah,
there's lots of stuff.
The Bible is full of shit. That's like, don't trust women.
No, I work in where I work when I am out in public. I am not kidding you. If there is a lone woman walking in the same place I am, I very distinctly will not look anywhere near her. I will look off, and I will walk as far over on the side of whatever sidewalk or area I can, without it being, me falling through like tumbleweed or anything like that, because
because that looks suspicious.
Because that would look weirder. I inherently assume that woman is afraid that I might do something to her, because that's the world that women have to navigate, and I just accept it, that this is something I have to do.
Yeah, and that's something that I need to think about more, I guess, because I am a big scary dude.
Yeah, and that's it for me too. I am a lot bigger than most of the people where I work.
Yeah.
And even if I am not as jacked as you are, as far as the
it's not just the jacked. It's the whole fully tattooed, huge beard. Like, even if I wasn't jacked, like, those are alarm bells. You know what I mean?
And I've been told I walk around like I want to beat the shit out of somebody all the time, which is probably true. That is my default kind of stance.
You're not content to be on this planet. Yeah.
Right. So that's something I very consciously do whenever there is a lone woman. It's just something I've adopted as a default thing to do, because I just assume that I am a threat, even if I know I'm not, because I know I'm not, but they don't know me. So,
and this goes back to my whole problem with, like, because I don't have these, I guess these hatreds, these negative views of things. It's like I forget that they're there sometimes. You know what I mean? Because it seems absurd to me. It's like, well, no, she's not any less than me, or I'm not any better than. But these misogynies, they go back forever. I mean, they go back to the Bible. Bible's full of it. So it does not surprise me that at some point a woman on the other side of the fence looked at it and said, "You know what? Here's a theory for you, you fucking rapists." And it's like, yeah, and then the misogynist, not rapist, is sitting there going, "But I'm not a rapist. I don't want to be lumped in with this crowd." And you're like, yeah, but that's exactly the feeling. You don't want to be lumped in with that crowd. You are not the caveman rapist, and she is not Eve. She is not Delilah. She is not any of those archetypes. So we have a lot of work as a society to do.
And sadly, it's I think a lot of people, men, just to be honest about it, I think a lot of men's reaction to this is, well, it's not fair, I should have to do anything. And it's like, okay, if you're starting from that point, then there is no progressing with you.
Yeah, and the thing is, my reaction to it was, I don't like it. And there's nothing I can do about it, because...
Right. But you didn't dismiss it as reality.
No, not at all. I didn't dismiss it at all.
That's what happens.
It kind of blew my mind in a sad way, where I was like, holy shit. I was like, you're right.
Yeah.
And here's the thing is, I hate to bring this in, right? But like, one of the things that occurred to me was, there's a whole group of women that are afraid of trans women being in bathrooms with them, right? And I never understood, because the argument was that basically, well, they could be a rapist. And they're like, well, of course they're not, because they're a woman now. But if you have that vision of all men, basically any person with a penis is under the umbrella of the implied rapist. Right?
Yes, that's one
it makes it really complicated now, doesn't it?
Okay. It does, and it does only in the same way that so many things are complicated, which is if any of those women, all right, okay, I won't say if any, I would suspect that if those women knew trans women, they would not have that fear, and the reason is
no, and listen, but here's the counter, right? Because I already talked to a woman about this.
Yeah.
Here's the counter. They know me. I'm a good guy. I'm not a bad guy. But the implied threat still exists because I have the apparatus for it.
Right, but there is a difference between.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
The thing that many people don't perhaps comprehend about most, if not all, trans individuals, can't say all because of course you never know.
Yep.
But most are just concerned with trying to live life without being harassed and targeted and everything else. They're never going to make it past that.
Absolutely.
And that's what I mean about if these women knew trans women and understood what they were going through. I
agree with you 100%.
They won't look at that person the same as you, even if the equipment is the same. That's what I'm getting at, is there is a difference there.
And that I know, but you're asking, so you're basically asking somebody.
No. I understand where it comes from.
Yeah, okay. So you see it. So you see the conundrum, right? You
Yes,
see the problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whereas,
because somebody said, because a while back I read a line that basically said that feminism stands in the way of trans rights, right? And I didn't understand it. I was reading an article about a musician a female musician who basically was very unhappy with trans rights because she was like, well, this is men dressing up. That was her line, right? And she was very pissed off about it, and she was a feminist. And in there was this line about how feminism stands in the way of trans rights. And I didn't understand it. Like, because, I'm not a woman. I'm not a trans woman. Like, I'm outside of this situation, so I'm trying to understand it from outside the house. You know what I mean? But after hearing this weird caveman rape idea, this mindset, I was like, oh, you know what? I kind of understand now what the argument is. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm just saying that it gives me a greater sense of understanding why these two groups would have issues with each other. Do you know what I mean?
I understand the default position. But
yeah,
what I'm saying,
yeah. I mean, listen,
my point is if
individual nuance is always going to be
different. That's what I mean about if the people with these fears personally knew someone who was trans, then I think that fear would, at the very least, be reconsidered. I'm not saying that.
That would.
All women should just understand that trans rights. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying
that would be the hope.
Yeah. Whereas,
but the problem,
and this is the key difference in what you're talking about. Whereas knowing you are a good man doesn't erase the fact that there are lots of other men that they will be properly suspicious of, regardless of how many good men they know. You know what I mean? Whereas understanding where the majority, again, can't say everybody.
Yes, but I hate to be the devil's advocate on this.
Go ahead.
But somebody who has this fear will say, what is the difference between a trans woman and a man in a dress?
Well, knowing a trans woman would enable that difference.
Yes.
No, there is a difference. No, there is a difference.
I agree with you, but the problem is that's the argument you come up against, and then you have to get into nuance.
I don't know if that argument would come up from somebody who was actually open-minded and listened. I think there is a difference you can't say it as a blanket. You never can.
No, I know that. And what's fucked up is that this is two men talking about this who are both basically heterosexual.
Yeah. Right, yeah.
So it's like, this is a...
But importantly, both men who know trans people.
Well, yeah, and trying to understand the dynamic and the issues here, and the fact that it's.
I'm not. By the way, just to be very
Yeah.
clear, because I don't want anybody to misunderstand, that is not me saying that if a woman with a legitimate fear meets a trans woman, that suddenly a fear of men and
should disappear.
Suspicion is suddenly going to evaporate. That's not what I'm
saying. Yeah, and I'm not. And of course, I am not saying that I side with this feminist theory. I'm saying that I understand the fear, and I understand how when you have these two groups, that there can be a problem.
But what I have read and what I have heard people say within the trans community about the problem with exactly what you said about, oh, it's a man dressed up as a woman, is that is a fundamental misunderstanding of what being a trans woman is. Because it now, not to say that that has never happened in the history of everything, because anytime you say that, of course, there's going to be an example. But that's what I mean about the difference between.
I think that it is so tough.
Well, you were correct when you said the problem is nuance, which is not something most people want to grapple with.
Nuance is not the human species' strong suit.
Correct. So that is the real issue in that. So
and listen, and I said earlier that any ism that's taken to an extreme can be dangerous, right? So feminism taken to an extreme can be dangerous, right? But like I said, we are two heterosexual men discussing this, which is exactly the problem.
Well, yeah, and just to be honest about
but trying to understand the problem, and I think that's the key thing here. Is like, I don't know what to do with it, but I'm trying to understand it.
Well, and I think the idea that the form of feminism that says that all men are villains, well, that's not true either. It's not. Not all men are evil. They aren't. However, there is a large body of evidence.
But we live under the blanket of what evil men are capable of.
That's the thing, is when you actually look at statistics and facts and figures and what actually happens, it does become clear that the burden of proof of not being a scumbag is more heavily weighted on men.
And listen, I'll tell you, even the more fucked up part is you're more likely to be killed, raped, and harmed by a male that you already have in your life.
Sure, yeah.
So if anything, it's your poor decision making.
But I've actually
as to your partner.
I have actually heard people say, "Well, men can be raped too," and my response to that is always,
yes.
Okay.
And you know what? That argument was made today, and I agree. It is harder.
Well,
but it can happen.
It doesn't even have to do with how much more different. Forget all that. Yes, that's absolutely true. Yeah. But I'll tell you what, anybody who says that, my response to them is always, okay.
Okay. No, hold on. So you're talking about men being raped by women. Yeah, see, because the thing is, in my mind,
it was not specified.
And I'm thinking men being raped by men, because I know that there are cultures that use that to they weaponize that against other men.
Right, but it doesn't matter in what my response applies either way. Yeah. Now, it was not specified by women, but I'm sure that's what these people actually thought. But I don't know. I'm not in their minds. Yeah. But my response remains the same in either case. Pick any 5 states, any 5 cities, any 5 police departments, get their stats for the last 10 years on rape, and see what the gender of the people committing them are. And let's talk about who's actually under threat. Whether it's men on men or men on women, guess who the aggressor is likely to be in gender. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and the whole thing I said about your poor decision skills. There's women, let me rephrase. There's people. Let's just put it there. There's people who stay in relationships that are not healthy and not safe for them long past the point they should be.
Oh, of course.
Who don't get out when they should. Who stay with abusive, sometimes
and by
alcoholic.
The way, Look into why that often happens, because those women can't work because they've been under the thumb of somebody and they've been made not to work.
Yeah.
They have no ability to support themselves. There's lots of reasons that aren't just, she's a dummy.
No. It's there. I know it is complicated. There's a lot to it, but it still leads back to the fact that person is one of the bigger dangers in your life. You need to get out, right? So. Anyway, yes, man, I feel like we've been talking about this for like ever, but it's because we took like an hour long intermission.
We've been talking about audio settings for about an hour.
So yeah, and like I said, this was a weird feminism theory that popped up in this college course. They talked about it in the course itself for about 10 minutes. Whereas like it's been on my mind since, and I've since learned all about the Nixon administration and Vietnam and Watergate and all this shit. But that caveman rape theory, it just like bounced around the top of my head because I was like, oh God, that's awful. And I think sometimes learning about different people is all about how the information can be put into a narrative that makes you understand. Where you sit there and go, oh, I get it now. Like, and that's the thing is I understand that fear now. I get it. I understand why when a woman walks down the street, like you said, every man can be a threat. Every man that you don't know can be a threat. And in some cases, the man that you do know is a threat. I mean, you saw that whole thing in Florida with the was it Mothers of Liberty or some shit like that?
Oh,
Yeah, where she's like part of the school board, and her husband is like I think he's the head of the Republican something. I can't remember what it is now, but like they got in trouble because they were having this threesome relationship with this woman, and then apparently they were supposed to have a threesome, and the wife backed out, and then the husband was like, "No, we're still doing this," and the other one was like, "No, we're not," and then apparently he assaulted her, and it's like, yeah, it's fucked up. And I said to my wife, I was like, I thought it was a one-time thing, but when I found that this was something they like regularly got up to, and then this time she said no, and he was like, "No, you're gonna do this," I was like, that's more fucked up to me because it's like, because you know her, you've known her for a while. You've had relations with her. I was like, and it's like you completely disrespected the fact that she said no. And it's like it makes it worse. And yes, now they're the school board is trying to get this woman off the board now because they're looking at her going, wait a minute, like, you say all this like family values stuff, and then you guys have been doing this on the side, which isn't that just the way it always is with politicians of every kind, where like they always say one thing and then really behind closed doors they're snorting coke and drinking and fucking around and just being usually pretty awful human beings.
Well, it's certainly often the case.
Yes. Yeah, because I know that. Oh, is it when actually going back to the courses when they were talking about Watergate? One of the things that really bothered people was apparently when they listened to the Watergate tapes was how foul-mouthed Nixon and his people were. Apparently, if you listen to those tapes, they curse horrible. A lot. They're like racist, misogynistic assholes.
Oh yes.
And at that point, people weren't used to the fact that because they're used to the president on TV being very stately.
Sure.
Yeah. So,
my fellow Americans, I come to you as a noble and
and meanwhile they get these tapes where are like, oh, that motherfucker can go get fucked, that piece of shit. They're like, whoa, that's the yeah. So
wait a minute, no, I didn't elect a dirty, foul-mouthed pig. Yes, you did. And you have a lot of times.
What is that? Our 40-minute intro now? I don't even know because the show's all bisected right now.
Yeah, it's probably about now.
All right, so I'm gonna switch off this weird, heavy, intense, sad shit, and move on to some hopefully less minefieldy topics. You know when you were talking about something that is a minefield, and you're sitting there going, I really hope that people don't misunderstand what I'm trying to say. I'm just exploring an idea. I'm not taking a position. And you're like tiptoeing. You're tiptoeing through a minefield.
That's why I have become very. If you listen to these shows, especially over the last 5 or 6 years, you'll hear me say things like, "Just to be clear," and
I'm not saying
all, but most, or not everybody. I try to.
It's hard to discuss ideas and to really like.
No, you know what?
It is.
Okay, no, it's not. No, it's not. The problem is, it's not actually difficult. Rational people who actually understand what the importance of nuance and discourse and actually engaging with why you think of something a certain way and whether it's a valid or invalid argument. Those people are not difficult to argue with. They're not. The problem is the people who just want to adhere to what they think and cannot have any latitude. And I don't think that's most of the people who listen to this show. But
I know, but then you get overheard saying something, or someone hears something, and they said they've already got their idea made up, and they go,
or
I can't believe you said that. And you're like, that's not what I said.
To be fair about it, let's say somebody did stumble across our show within the last 5 episodes.
Yeah.
If you don't know how, as you said, you're a good guy, so you can't comprehend certain things. It's the same thing that's why I try to be very clear, because it is possible that somebody would stumble on the show and be like, whoa, wait a minute, what the hell are they kidding? And or not understand. So it is important to be clear about what you're saying and to not speak in broad strokes and to clarify. That stuff is valid. Yeah. But yes, it does make it more difficult. But you know what? At the same time...
Oh, it's not like we've stopped.
No, well, beyond that, though, it should be difficult because nuance is not simple. Therefore, if we're doing things in one-liners, we've got a problem. So I'm okay with explaining things in a difficult way because that's what nuance demands. It demands you have to start digging past the first layer of something.
Actually, speaking of nuance... Netflix just put out a new World War II series where they used a lot of footage from taken by soldiers on the ground level, right? That I guess was not easily usable before, but now they've kind of cleaned it up.
Enhanced it or whatever.
I think but I'm fine with that in this instance because it was very grainy. And the idea was they take this footage and they use it as a visual for the narration of various individuals about World War II, but from a different point of view. And one of the things I really liked about it was I got something that I never gotten before out of this documentary. I got the point of view of Germans and Polish men and Russians. Every time I get a documentary, most of the point of view are from Americans and Brits, right? Whereas in this situation, they have Germans talking about their time in the, being Nazis, essentially, like being part of the Nazi regime and what they were thinking at the time. And like, it's frightening and yet very fascinating because you're sitting there going, okay, that makes sense. No, that makes sense. But like, I understand now this mindset that you people had where suddenly it's like, they thought they were the good guys. They thought they were awesome. They thought they were, doing, and that's that whole thing is that sometimes people like, cause you look at stuff from the outside, you look at the Nazis and you're like, those guys were monsters. It's like, they just walked around being monstrous. It's like, no, they didn't think they were monstrous at all. They thought they were fucking awesome. Right. I mean, the German population didn't believe the concentration camps, which is a funny line because you kind of sit there and go, all these people were disappearing. I don't think you wanted to know what they were doing with them. But the idea that they actually give voice to what other people were thinking and doing along with the win. So, it's like understanding the losing side and the winning side, the good guys and what you perceive as the bad guys to get a greater view of the overall situation. Because you learn nothing from the winners alone. And so far, so many documentaries are about the winners. The winners and their winning. And it's like, no, I need to know more because the fact that Nazi Germany happened is terrible. And especially living in the age we are, where fucking people are throwing around all kinds of weird Nazi commentary, it's important to learn it, to see it. I mean, they've got fucking, they got Italians talking about Mussolini and like their perception of things and how they were going to kick the shit out of the world. And, so it's, I mean, there's a moment in that documentary where they have a young German soldier, and this is when Germany invaded Russia, which was their ally, right? And they have all these POWs, these prisoners they've gotten together, and they've realized they can't carry them. So they say to this, because they're running out of provisions and winter's coming in, and they have this one German soldier, and they say, hey, take these guys out. Hey, take this guy out into the woods and blow their brains out because we can't handle them anymore. And this German soldier, and this German, the actual guy is narrating what happened, and he talks about how he took this guy out into the woods, and he brought him out to a secluded place, and he was supposed to kill him, and he couldn't do it. And he basically said to the guy, he's like, I'm not this kind of killer. He's like, because in his mind, this was murder. This wasn't combat.
Yeah, this isn't murder. Yeah, this is not battle. Yeah. This is execution.
And he told him to run. Right? He's like, I just told him to run. He's like, and then it basically follows up. He's like, this was one example of me being unable to do this. He's like, but there's many other people who were easily doing this. And you get into this idea that even in time, there's always going to be people who have their own lines on both sides of a war, and often when I watch these documentaries, I really do worry, like what the world might have looked like if things had gone differently. Like if the Nazis hadn't been knocked out of like all of Europe, like what that would have looked like in the future. I got to go back and watch that movie. You ever seen that movie Fatherland with Rutger Hauer?
Oh, sure. Not a while, but I remember it.
Yeah, it's a good movie. And it's all about what if the Nazis had not necessarily lost. I think they kind of came to a truce with the U.S. or something like that. But then
they hadn't been that they didn't get destroyed or
Yeah, and then after the war, they cover up all the concentration camp stuff.
Yes,
right. So nobody ever finds out about it. And the movie is about something like 30 or 40 years down the road. Somebody uncovers all the concentration camp information, and it comes out, and it's like, well, what happens now? So yeah, it's also a book if you're interested. Called I'm pretty sure it's called Fatherland.
Yeah, I think. Right.
So yes, speaking of nuance, speaking of different sides of the argument and trying to understand the situation as a whole, that Netflix documentary is very interesting to me. I'm about halfway through it. The footage doesn't always match up with what's going on, but enough so that you get the idea, and they've almost made me cry at least once. So, because I got a soft spot for kids, so like I remember we watched this documentary about Auschwitz. There was this whole thing in there about them going in France, like separating all the kids from all the Jewish children from the parents, and then like training them towards the concentration camps. And I just had I was so upset at this image of these children being hauled away from their parents and put on these trains. It just hit me so hard. Because like you have a soft spot for dogs, but like
well, I was going to say I skipped the animal part of Chernobyl, the series, because I knew what it was, and I wasn't going to watch that.
Yeah, so it's that kind of thing. Yeah.
So yes, I'm familiar.
Yeah, so in this series now, there's actually a clip where there's a Nazi soldier, and he's like trying to separate a 2-year-old from her mother, and he's like shooing the kid away, and the kid's trying to get to its mom, and I was just like, oh my God. I was like, go off of this clip. I was like, I cannot survive this because I'm such a wimp with that stuff. So anyway, yes, if you're like me and you find World War II interesting, that documentary is it's still got things in it that are new that you'll see different. But now I'm desperately trying to get these goddamn graphic novels. All right, I'll start with the fluff because we could use some fluff right about now.
Sure.
So I read a book called The Chrononauts Volume 2. It's a Mark Millar book, right? Now, I reviewed the first one a while back, forever back. This is an absolute fluff book. The first book was like a rock star Michael Bay adventure through time. The main characters are basically like a scientist and a like test pilot, and they create this time machine in the first book that causes them to get lost in the history, but they do all kinds of insane shit and finally make their way back to the future, right? This book is exactly like this, except this time they go to the future, and the only reason I'm even reviewing it is because the future thing is kind of fascinating. So essentially, in the first book, I remember they said at some point that they tried to go to the future and it didn't work. And they couldn't figure out why, so they went to the past. So in this book, they've been trying to go to the future and they keep hitting a wall with their machinery. And they eventually discover that what it is that there's the guy who is essentially the main scientist's mentor already went into the future. And when he went into the future, he realized that they needed to keep track of the timeline to make sure that the present was on the best track. So whenever something would start to crop up in their future present, they would send people back in time to change things, which would then retroactively change what was going on. And only the people who were at the kind of the apex of it in this association would remember it, right? That's a really neat idea, right? Now, if you're looking for something deep, you're not going to get it because this is a Mark Millar book. This is give me a cool thought experiment and I'll turn it into a race car. That's what he always does. And I have a time and place for this mood of book, right? This is like a popcorn action movie, right? But it starts with a neat idea. And this neat idea is you have this group that goes back through time doing all this stuff. And at one point, they invent video games at one point in an effort to distract, some sort of calamitous event. And the guy's one of the main characters is like, wait, Pong? I remember Pong. And he's like, yeah, he goes, I created that. He's like, I created Pong to stop people from basically having like a cultural uprising that would change the past. He's like, but you'll remember Pong. He's like, because you existed in that time. Like, everything is retroactively being changed. But of course, when you get to a utopia, what happens, right? What has to happen when you discover a utopia? There has to be a downside. There has to be. Well,
yes, there has to be a catch to it somewhere.
There has to be a catch. And that's exactly what happens, which is that our two main characters are super happy in the future and they bring their families into the future and they're very happy and everything's kind of working out. And then essentially the doctor and his main assistant, the guy who runs everything, keeps saying, well, don't worry, at some point we're going to bring the two main guys in on the full deal. We need to know that they can handle this first. So at one point they have a situation where there is this like neo-Nazi cultural fascist fucko movement that will eventually create a war in the future that'll destroy the world, right? And they keep trying to change it and they keep trying to stop it from happening and they keep changing little things to kind of shift people away from this mindset and all this stuff. And it finally gets to a point where the doctor says, we can't do this anymore. We've tracked it back to the source, which is this like 13-year-old girl who starts writing all these, fascist Nazi blogs. And as she gets older, it just gets worse and worse and worse. And it's the Hitler thing, right? That's essentially what it comes back to. It's the Hitler moment where can you go back and kill Hitler as a child, right? And our two main characters are like, no, you can't go back and kill Hitler as a child. At which point, what I do like is the doctor's like, okay, you guys are on board with it. That's cool. And he kills them both, and that's it. He walks away. Now, what would have been neat if that was the end of the book? Because a book that takes... you know what? I would expect that from a Mark Millar book. Because he does take that brutal kind of angle. But the problem is, it's the future. And in the future, they can repair all kinds of things. They can basically bring you back from the dead. So they're supposed to dispose of the bodies, but the test pilot character was banging one of the lower assistants, and when the lower assistant sees that they've been shot, she immediately brings him to the hospital. The scientist character's wife is now working as a doctor in the future. She brings them back from the dead. She says, what the fuck just happened? And they say, we have to stop the doctor because he's going to go back and kill this 13-year-old girl, and that's fucking awful. And what then proceeds is a Michael Bay time travel spectacle where the main scientist guy goes to stop the doctor, and the doctor keeps pulling future versions of himself to basically have like a brawl. So the scientist does the same thing. So at some point there's like 100 of them just fighting in the streets, right? And eventually the scientist, of course, wins, and he kills the doctor. So the scientist basically goes back to the future to see, what has happened. And they found that by not killing the girl, they've essentially like brought the end of the world about. They brought a world war that decimated everything. So the doctor's like, well, the scientist now says, "Oh shit! Well, we can't leave this girl there because obviously there's a problem." So the final solution of the book, after all this chaos and another mess that I don't even need to get into, is that they decide to abduct the little girl, and the scientist says, "I'm going to raise her as my daughter and see if I can't raise her right." Now, they don't ever stop to get into how weird that is. Right? That's weird, right?
Uh-oh.
Well, we are back again after another. Now, this one, I honestly do believe, because this is the problem when you have a multi-stage failure thing, is you start to ascribe everything to the same failure. And the one mistake I made, which now we've bypassed, maybe, hopefully, is I lifted my headphones up to scratch my ear. And these are those headphones that think they're smarter than you are. And they're like, oh, if you've removed your headphones and done nothing else, you must not be listening to your audio. I have had this problem happen on other computers with Sony headphones. That's the reason I'm familiar.
If we were NASA, we would have killed so many astronauts by now.
Yes. But like I said, I have had this exact thing happen with Sony headphones on completely autonomous systems. So I don't believe this is the same problem as everything else. But
so Joe wants to soldier through and keep going to Mount Doom. So we're going to keep going.
If it crashes again, you will suddenly hear Lando going, "Fuck you," and then it'll cut to me going, "And that's the show." So then you'll know.
No, because I don't. I laugh. That's what I do.
Well, that's what I mean. So that's what I'm saying.
Okay, so... But I'm going to pose the question to you because now I have you here. And I posed it when you weren't here. But now you are here. So,
yes.
Is it not fucked up to abduct a 13-year-old girl from the past to raise in the future as your daughter against her will?
Yes.
To raise her right?
Yes. This is very similar, by the way. My wife and I are just finishing Fringe. And this is a central question in Fringe where, spoiler alert, I guess, the main character whose son died in his universe went to a different universe and abducted his own son
He saved him and abducted him. That's the thing.
He never brought him back. And in doing so, he potentially had destroyed two universes. So this is exactly the kind of thing that Fringe is going through right now, where it's like, okay, what is the morality of child abduction, even if it's for good reasons? But this is a Mark Millar book, so they just gloss over it, and he's a fucking hero, and the kid appears to be happy. So it's very fucked up. And that's really, to end it, that's what you have to accept. When you read a Mark Millar book, it is like a Michael Bay movie. It is fast-paced action. The only thing is I do like that Mike Millar likes to start with interesting concepts and then just kind of run mad with them, right? That is this book. It's got lots of plot holes. It's got lots of weirdness, but it's a fun read. It's a fun read once. Because once you read it once, you look at it and go, okay, wait a minute. What about A, B, C, D, E, F? And you're like, that's fine, because I didn't notice them until after the fact. So, except for the thing where he takes the girl. I'm like, that just doesn't work. So, yes, that's my Chrononauts Volume 2. I'm amazed they made a second one. The first one was like such a one-shot. I was like, oh, God. It's like, why would they make another one? So anyway, I wanted to review that though, because if you're looking for essentially like the mindless action movie of comics, Chrononauts Volume 2. Actually, just read Chrononauts Volume 1 and 2. They work really well together, and they are a fun read. They're just, it's taking really heavy, like, mathematical time theory and then just turning it into a Michael Bay Transformers movie. That's really the best way to describe it, but in a fun way. You know what? I'm going to jump in with a suggestion.
Yeah.
Because you're to be transparent to everybody, Lando, before we started recording again, suggested scrapping because this thing might wreck again.
Oh, I did, yeah.
Now, you had another graphic novel review. I had 2 movie reviews. However, I'm going to make a suggestion.
Yes.
Let's save your second graphic novel and my first movie review for the next show, and I'll tell you why.
To?
Because my second movie review is directly about the ethics of time travel. So there is a nice natural. Yes, it is. It's a natural segue. So just in case, since we seem to have squeezed,
I agree with you. The only reason this sucks.
Yeah.
I busted my ass today to read this other book, so I'd be ready with the review.
Well, you'll still have it.
Nope.
We'll just.
Oh no, I know.
It's
one. Just funny that I was trying so hard to get it done before we recorded.
Well, and obviously,
but that's fine because honestly, it is such a good book. I would want more stable time to review it.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and skip on.
So fine, well, I'll just give you my Michael Bay comic review.
Okay, perfect. Let me just. I'm just making sure that I have. Okay, the output is set correctly. Just because I had to switch one thing. Okay,
Man,
so
this is like running the Millennium Falcon off like a car battery.
Yeah, it probably is. I have already titled the episode "Audio Hijinks," which I think is probably the nicest way to say it. But yeah, let's jump straight to my second movie review, and I'll just skip right over the first one. We can do them in the next one. So, the movie review I have clips for, as I said, does directly tie into your question about the morality of altering time. Now, this is a movie from this year, which I knew nothing about, had heard nothing about, did not nowhere on the radar. I don't think I ever even heard the name. And then it happened to come up in the second 2023 movie roundup that Red Letter Media did. They did a 2-parter for this year where they just kind of blow through movies quickly, talking about movies and shows they like, dislike, whatever. And one of the movies that one of the hosts talked about is a movie called Aporia. That's Aporia from this year. And he described it, and he was talking about the basic synopsis. And the idea is that there was a couple of guys invent what they wanted to be a time machine until they realized they can't invent a time machine. But what they managed to invent instead is a time-traveling particle gun. And what I mean by that is they figured out that their machine could send a small particle of energy to a specific time and place. And when it appeared there, it would burst, meaning if you targeted somebody's head with it, you could kill them. And so the movie starts out. You don't know any of this right away, but the trailer and all this stuff kind of indicates it. And when I heard that idea, I went, "Oh, that's interesting. This sounds like Primer. This sounds like, oh, okay," because the way he was talking about it,
which is like one of the greatest low budget, awesome
grounded time travel stories, right? And so now, as a quick summary up front, it is in between something like Primer and something like, I don't know, pick any blockbuster time travel movie where you hop around. It's in between because it's definitely not as, because Primer is pretty logically foolproof. People have worked out that time travel, and as far as I understand it, it's pretty tight. Like they did it in a way that holds up under scrutiny. This movie, I think you could find some holes in, but it's not really about the time travel. It's about the morality. It's about the ethics. It's about the decisions and the impacts of what you do. But it's also not as flimsy-whimsy as something like, let's say, Doctor Who as a big budget example. So it's in between, where it feels grounded and it feels like it's trying to take a realistic accounting.
Is that Judy Greer?
Yes, it is. Yeah, that's her.
Wow. Yeah. And this is like a serious movie.
It is. Yes, it's drama.
Wow, it's so weird to see her. I'm so used to her being like in absurdist comedies.
Yeah, no. This is a very straightforward. She's very good in it. I mean, everybody's very good in it. It's really basically 4 characters is the whole movie. And it would definitely appeal to you as a parent because there's a huge parenting angle to this. So the movie starts out, and we see Judy Greer, and I don't remember the actor who plays her husband. If you have the page up in front of you, his name's Mal. Whatever the actor's name is?
Oh, sorry. Also, I'm trying to find the summary for what actually happens.
Okay, so it's very straightforward. But so they starts out, and the two of them are discussing
Eddie Gathegi, I think.
Okay, well, however it's pronounced, that guy's great too. Everybody in this is really good, which is the 4 characters are, what is Judy Greer's character's name? Sophie, Mal, Jabir, and Riley. That's the 4 people you really pay attention to, care about throughout the movie. So it starts out with Mal and Sophie basically discussing what the most beautiful thing to them is. Now, because of our audio things, I'm going to boost the volume on this so that it's easier for Lando to hear, because this is significant. So I want to make sure that I'm going to try this and see if you can hear
Joe is apologizing ahead of time for blowing out everybody's speakers.
Actually not, because I normally have to amplify the SFX anyway, so this will just minimize my having to do that. So in a way, all of this helped me in one particular area. So this is their first discussion on what the most beautiful thing in the world is. So let me play this.
You're overthinking it.
Okay, fine. The Leonid meteor shower.
What? That's
oh
not
my
a
God.
thing.
Honey.
What is it?
Come on, look at this.
Okay, well, first of all, it's your screensaver, which is offensive. But also that blur is the prettiest thing you've ever seen. It's the most beautiful thing.
It's the second most beautiful thing that I've ever seen.
Thank you. That's a little better.
Okay, fine. What's yours?
Oh, that's easy. Sunset over the Grand Canyon.
I cannot believe I've never been there.
It's the closest thing to heaven on earth. I'd like that.
Right, so then we cut to, and the scene is lit in a very glowing and golden way, like they're clearly very in love and all the rest of it. Then it hard cuts to her waking up in bed alone, and suddenly the tint is all blue, and that's an immediate signal, as if, we wouldn't find out 2 seconds later, that he is now dead. And what you find out is that this is now, I believe it's 8 months after he was killed by a drunk driver. Drunk driver plowed into him, killed him, and has left Sophie and the daughter, Riley, on their own. And they are basically at the point of not even speaking, because I don't think it's the thing where the daughter is blaming her for the death of her father, but she and the father were very close. They are both very into science. That's why when she reacts to the meteor shower, she's like, what are you talking? Like, she has no interest in any of their scientific pursuits, and they are very much on the same page as far as nerds. They're basically nerds. They launch rockets together. They're into, they want to see the meteor shower, all this stuff. So the loss of the father basically has alienated the two of them. They still live together. I mean, she's not old enough that she could, if she was old enough to move out, she would have moved out, because they're basically almost not speaking. And so Judy Greer is a single mother now, she's suing the drunk driver. That's not going well because he's been convicted but not sentenced. She's trying to work this job where now her daughter is acting out in school, and they basically have suspended her. So they call her and say, you have to come pick her up. And the only person she can call is Jabir, who we find out is the best friend of her husband, and friends with her too. And he was one of the two people involved in this machine, which we don't know yet. But basically, she calls him. He's like an Uber driver, a Lyft driver, something like that. And, she has to call him, and he's like, okay, let me drop this fare off, and I'll pick her up. And she's like, I'm very sorry. I just can't get off work, and I have to go to court. And the court thing is for the drunk driver, who walks out. And the drunk driver, it's important because there's a lot of stuff that comes up around the drunk driver. The drunk driver, when he walks out of the courtroom, does not appear to show any remorse. And the thing is, initially, I was like, okay, so I'm supposed to hate this guy. But then I thought about the fact, and this is a bit of a tangent, that in this country, he was no doubt told by his lawyer, you are not to apologize, look at her, anything, because that implies guilt. Because you are not allowed to be a human being with things like this, or suddenly in the legal system, you are now at fault. So I immediately then thought, no, maybe it's not that he's really a bad person. Maybe this is what his lawyer told him to do. But regardless, we're seeing everything from Judy Greer's from Sophie's point of view. And she's obviously having an extremely hard time. And so then that night, she basically has a birthday party for Riley, the daughter. And the daughter is basically completely uninterested and doesn't want any part of it. And that's because what we later find out, but we don't know yet, is that the plan was for them all to go for her birthday and watch the Leonid meteor shower with the father. And Judy Greer has completely forgotten this. And so she realizes it kind of as everything is imploding, and she has a bit of a breakdown. And then she meets up with Jabir to talk to him about it. And just make sure you're still hearing me, right?
I can still hear you.
Just making sure. Just making sure that you didn't have...
By all means, check in.
Okay, yes. Well, because I know I vanished from you, so just check.
No, by all means, I'm still present.
And you heard the last clip, and you were able to understand it.
Yes.
Okay, so the higher volume is good. All right. So now I will play the discussion between Sophie and Jabir right after the birthday party has essentially collapsed.
Stop being so hard on yourself.
Your birthday, and I fucked it up.
And we all make mistakes.
Sometimes I get so mad, I just want to strangle the man that did this to us.
Darby Brinkley. The man who took my family from me was named Fuad Saadi.
What happened?
This man, Saadi, was a rival of my father's. He reported my family as the enemies of the government, and it didn't matter that it was bullshit or lie. You know, the guard took my family anyway. And I was lucky. If I wasn't at school, I would have been taken too.
Oh my God. I'm so sorry. Mal never told me.
I still dream of saving my family every day.
So basically now, after they're sitting there for a little while, Sophie says something about, I wish there was a way that we could fix things. And Jabir says, well, there might be a way. And she says, what are you talking about? And he says, well, Mal and I were working on this machine. And we initially thought we could make a time travel machine. And then we figured out that we couldn't. And she, of course, thinks he's nuts. And basically has a negative reaction to it because it's like a fantasy she doesn't even want to indulge. But he insists.
Don't give me hope.
Don't give me false hope. But then he basically says, come over here, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. And so then we get this explanation of what the machine is.
Sophie, trust me. Please. We can save Mal. This machine is a gun that can fire a bullet into the past. All we need is a target. Here. There are 6 men living in Los Angeles with the name Darby Brinkley. I just want to know which one is the driver, okay?
Mal is dead. It's impossible.
So, what harm is there in trying?
Which, of course, is a very convincing argument. Is, okay, if it's not going to work, who cares? Let me just run this thought experiment. So basically, they comb through the guy's Instagram posts because he says, I don't have the machine. The machine doesn't have enough power to go back more than, I think he says, a year and a half. Because at first they find pictures of him, but they're from too far back. He says, we have to find a picture of him within the last year or so with some kind of landmark in the background because I have to calculate where the Earth's spin was.
You need the location. Yeah.
Yes, he's like, I can figure it out, but I need a location to start from and let me figure this out. So they find a picture and he says, okay, let me work on this. And so, you see more time and he's crunching the numbers and everything else. And finally he comes back and he says, okay, he says, I've got the coordinates ready and we can try this. And she says, okay, how does this even work? And he says, I will explain what it does. And this is the explanation of what exactly the machine does and how it works. Oh, I should say, you'll hear the noises. He's powering the machine up as he's explaining this. So he's got it ready to go, literally at the point where once it's powered on, somebody has to hit the enter key, and then he explains it.
Do you know what a particle accelerator is?
No.
No, okay. This is kind of like that. The particle accelerator speeds up a subatomic particle into almost light speed. And this machine does that to abstract particles. Jabir, how? It's a good question. An abstract particle is a mathematical function that can affect the subatomic world. This machine sends an abstract particle into a specific point of space-time, okay? And that particle causes a series of quantum reactions resulting in a burst of energy. And if that burst of energy is in a person's head, kill them.
So the machine powers up, and he says, I know where this guy is, and we can kill him. And he says, if we do that, then everything will, then Mal won't be dead, but things will be different, because he says, you and I are in this room. So our memories will stay the way they are because we're here when we do this. We're not outside.
They're in the pinnacle of the event.
Exactly. He's like the epicenter or whatever they call it. Yeah. So he says, but this is the important part. He says, I have to tell you, there is no undo button if you do this. You will kill this man. We're talking about killing a person, and it will change things. And she says, yeah, I don't care. And she hits the button and fires it. Now, when it happens, they both think it fails, because all that happens is the machine kind of puffs out some smoke, but there is no big noise. There is no, shockwave, Michael Bay-ist type of thing. There's no big indicator.
There wouldn't be, would there?
There wouldn't be, but of course a lot of movies would make a big thing of it. But this one, like I said, it's literally just a little puff of smoke comes out, and Sophie gets very upset and says, I don't know why I thought this would work. I can't believe I bought into this. And she basically runs out, and she's breaking down again, and she drops her phone. And as she drops her phone and picks it up, she gets a phone call. And gee whiz, guess who's calling her? It's her husband, who is now alive, and the accident never happened. And she goes and meets him, and he's alive. Now, the only thing I don't know is his left arm doesn't work. And I don't know if that was in the very, very beginning scene. I don't remember whether I noticed his arm or not, but I seem to think that his arm was working. So there is that difference, I think. But they never really, they tell the story of it, but it doesn't seem to be a major story point. But he does talk about an accident. So it's almost as if he did still have an accident, but it wasn't fatal, and it wasn't with that guy.
Fatal, yeah.
Right. So basically now suddenly she's thrilled he's alive, and, they go and have the Leonid meteor shower. And the thing is, he starts noticing that she's different, because she's not unhappy about the Leonid meteor shower now. And she's making breakfast when he says, I always make breakfast. You never do. And she's like, no, you sleep. I'll do it. And he's giving her these looks because suddenly to him, his wife in an afternoon has suddenly, not bad, but now she's doing things differently. So you can tell that he's not really suspicious that something's wrong.
He's concerned.
He's not sure why suddenly certain behaviors have changed, even if they are for the better. So he's noticing things, but, he asks her a couple times, like, what's going on with you? And she's like, I'm just happy that we're all together. And he just kind of accepts that because, whatever. And of course, we know that it's because she's been alone for 8 months without this person that she loves and has been like falling apart. So of course, at this point, any of even the small things she might have been irritated about or whatever, that's all out the window. It's all gone because things are back the way that they were. And so things are going along. Everything's fine. And then there's a point where he comes in and he says, listen, I have to talk to you about something. And she's like, what? And he says, all right, it's about me and Jabir. Sit down and let me explain it to you. And of course, we know what's coming, but he doesn't know that she knows about the machine. And so this is the conversation they have.
So Jabir hasn't told him already?
No, Jabir didn't say anything. The two of them basically have agreed to that they're not going to say anything unless it comes up. And so, no, he has basically held his tongue, hasn't said a word. And Sophie and Jabir have just kept their mouths quiet.
That's nuts. Okay.
It's nuts, but the reaction from him might not be what you expect. So let me play this where basically he thinks he's revealing something and then gets something revealed to him.
Okay, so about 3 years ago, Jabir approached me for an idea for a time machine. I know it sounds stupid as fuck.
Oh, I'm listening.
Okay, well, it just made me feel so alive. Just the idea. So we started building it. And the more that we started working on it, the more we realized that this thing would actually never be a time machine. But it could be something.
Why are you telling me this?
I was embarrassed. I've been working on this thing for 3 years. And you've just been so nice to me, and I just think that there should be no secrets between us.
I know about the machine.
Why would Jabir tell you about the machine? Why would he say something to you?
Because he wanted to help me.
Help you how?
You were killed by a drunk driver. And we killed him. Please say something. It was the longest 8 months of my life. I didn't know what I was gonna do. Our daughter was unrecognizable, and she quit everything. She quit her rocket club. And she barely spoke to me. I was drowning. We both were.
I didn't realize I didn't capture it. And his reaction is, don't feel bad. Thank you for saving my life. Like, he is immediately, because she says, I'm sorry, I should have told you. He's like,
so he doesn't. So he's fine with it.
He's more than fine with it. I mean,
Okay.
He's basically like, you saved my life. Like, he's extremely appreciative of it.
Yeah.
So basically everything's fine. Everything's going along. And then we see that Jabir is kind of looking at articles about serial killers and mass shootings. And, he's talking about, maybe we should stop other things.
Why don't we stop other things from happening? Because
Yes.
we have the technology.
Right. And Mal argues, he's like, well, yeah, but you don't really know what's going to happen. And, we have to be really careful. We have to make sure that things are, that you can figure out what the direct results of what you're doing are, which of course now you never could. And that's sort of the problem, but they do actually somewhat address that. But in the meantime, Sophie starts to get curious about, because she knows that the drunk driver had a wife and a daughter. So she kind of just starts looking to see what happened to them. And she finds out that basically they lost all their money and lost their house and everything else after the husband died. And she starts to think, we may have caused this. So she goes and just pretends to be a friend of the husband's from when he was alive. And she just kind of stops by the diner where the widow works, and she's talking to her.
Yeah, this is the part that gets everything complicated.
And what she starts to try to fish out was he always a drunk? And the widow is basically like, no, he never drank. He drank so rarely that, we'd go to parties and everybody thought it was odd that he never drank. And, and then finds out, that they have like no money and they're almost destitute. And now she starts to think, okay, now the morality of what's going on starts to kind of hit her. And then she basically has this discussion with Jabir and Mal about, the fact that she thinks they caused this, and this is their discussion on it.
It's our fault.
That seems overly simplistic.
A woman went bankrupt because we used the machine.
Or she may have been going bankrupt anyway. And all we did was increase the speed of it.
I don't know about that theory, Jabir.
And listen, whatever happened, if we were held responsible for the byproduct of every choice we made, we'd all be in jail.
You just don't care.
I do care, Sophie. I told you there's no undo button.
Well, I want to do something.
Hey, you saved my life. You saved our family. Don't forget that.
No, I don't, and I wouldn't trade you for anything, but I can't. We hurt an innocent woman, and I can't let it go.
So now we're in the morality. This is the morality thing where they're going back and forth.
And the thing is, so, okay, you and I, really quickly, the way I look at this, right, is that, like the scientist, like Jabir said, you cannot be held responsible for every decision that you make, right? Because I'll give you a counter example, right? let's say it's not time travel. Let's say you see somebody about to push your spouse into the Grand Canyon by accident. They trip, right? They trip and they fall and they push your spouse into the Grand Canyon where they die, right? But you can go back in time 3 seconds and you can stop this by pushing the person into the Grand Canyon instead of them pushing your spouse, right? Are you going to feel bad about that?
No, of course not. But there is a complicating factor here, which might appeal more towards your situation than mine. As it goes on, what you realize is the reason that this is hitting Sophie the way it is because now she has done to these people what was done to her. But the difference is that she is the drunk driver. That might have been a one-time mistake, right? He may not have realized, which doesn't excuse it, certainly. But now she is, and knows she is, responsible for widowing a mother and daughter who are very similar. They're not as estranged because she invites them over to dinner, which Jabir and Mal are not happy about. But she's like, no, I have to know what's going on with them. I have to try to do something.
Yeah, and I guess my brain is like, you're not going to tell her because she'll think you're crazy. And what is she going to go to the cops and say they killed my husband through time?
Sure, of course. But
I guess this is where it starts to break down.
But now these people are in the exact situation she was in. So she understands the pain of person got taken away. Because basically what happened to him is they think it's a stroke. That's what they said happened to him.
So I'm just so curious. What is the end goal of this now?
So once they get to know them, and amazingly, the daughters become very close. The two daughters, after they have dinner, they're hanging out. They get together. The daughter, it's revealed, has MS. And part of the reason that they have no money is because the daughter needs treatments and they've blown all their savings on trying to keep the MS from getting worse and treating it. So now they've added another thing, another morality to this is now they've doomed the daughter because there is no real income and they basically have no money left. So now what Mal and Jabir start doing is Mal and he have this discussion about, you know, what they can do to try to help and you know, the idea of using the machine for other things. And Mal finds out that the reason that they're bankrupt is because the wife used to have a very successful bakery, and then she basically got wrapped up in a Ponzi scheme with a Bernie Madoff type of person who took all their money and there was no actual investment. And that was part of the reason that, and then combined with the death of the father, that's why they have no money. And so Mal says...
So here's my question. Here's a question for you. So I'm going to ask you if they're listening to this. So do they change something before they killed the guy so that the guy is not in that spot anymore, thus bringing him back and making it so they have money?
No. Here's the discussion of what Mal proposes they do.
Kara used to be a baker. 13 years ago, she owned a very successful cafe until she got her money tied up with this guy. He's considered to be Arizona's Bernie Madoff.
You want to use the machine again?
This guy is a convicted embezzler. He took her for everything that she had. She lost the bakery, she went bankrupt. We kill him, she has the money to pay the doctor bills and get Aggie the medication that she needs.
Wait a moment. We're killing someone for stealing? I don't think.
The thing is, this guy died in jail, so we'd just be shortening his life by 2.5 years.
That's a long time.
You wanted to help Kara. This can help Kara.
Okay, but doesn't changing Kara's life also change Darby's life? I'm not losing you again.
We'll do some diggings. Okay, I don't think it would be a problem. Darby has worked at area since he was 22.
I don't know.
Honestly, it might not even be possible. We still have to figure out a way to extend the machine's range.
There's a plasma idea.
Our upper limit is 5 years. That maybe doubles it. It's
No,
not enough.
actually, it's 8 years the range.
Actually, it's 5 years.
No, I can assure you, the engine can affect 8 years in the past.
You can assure us how?
Do you remember the Mirror Hill shooting? No?
That's because I shot it.
You used the machine without us?
And saved 26 children.
That's not the point.
We are considering killing a person
That
for
is the
stealing.
point.
I stopped a mass shooting.
Considering, not actually killing.
Beer, we are partners, right? You didn't think for 1 second to consult with me about these kinds of decisions?
No, brother. You know I've always been honest about my intentions.
You used the machine behind our back how many times?
Only once.
How many times?
Come on, I'm telling you, only one time.
Really?
Yes.
I wish I could believe that.
Listen, I cannot save my family. No matter how powerful make this machine, I cannot get them back, okay?
You made the machine to save your family.
Yes, but if I save them, everything resets.
Everything resets. Everything he's done is undone. If he saves his family, he doesn't move to America. We don't build the machine. You don't use it to kill Darby.
And you're dead.
Possibly.
Listen, I cannot help my family, so I help others. If we want to use this machine to help Kara, we can use it to help Kara.
So they end up going back and forth for a while, and ultimately they decide to use the machine because they are at a bowling alley. Sophie, Riley, the daughter, and Aggie, the daughter of the widow, are there, and she has a seizure and has to go into emergency surgery because she has some kind of attack due to the MS. And that's kind of the final straw of, okay, we're going to use it. You know, even if there's a risk, we'll use it anyway. And they use it. And the thing is, of course, there's no big shift. There's no big thing that happens. So they don't really know what's changed.
Yeah, they don't know what they've done. Yeah.
They go out and they have to go over to where they're shooting off rockets with the daughter. So they go over to the place and they get out and they don't see the daughter anywhere. In fact, there's nobody there. And so, of course, Sophie starts to panic and say, have we killed our child? And so they start to panic, and Mal's like, I probably just got the address wrong. You know how often I get the address wrong? And he says, yeah, I got the address wrong. Here, it's here. And they drive to the other location. They get out, and sure enough, there's the rocket people and everything else. And they go up to the table, and they say, hello, we're Riley's parents. And they say, Riley who? And they then again think that the daughter is dead. But then they get a call saying, hey, are you guys almost here for the play? The play is going to start in like 20 minutes. And they realize that, no, they're not at the rocket thing. There's apparently a play, and Riley's in the play. So they drive over to the play, and they get out of the car, and they're looking around, and they start yelling Riley's name, and a young boy responds and runs over to them and recognizes them as his parents, and they have no idea who he is.
Oh, that's fucked up.
It gets...
Man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically...
They destroyed their child and replaced it with another child who is their child,
who's had happy parents that have been supportive, all this stuff like everything else,
who have a nervous breakdown,
who have no idea who they are. So basically, Mal's like, "Oh no, we have to figure out how to fix this. We have to fix this somehow." And Sophie's like, "No, we cannot do any more. We keep coming up on this problem. We are his parents. We will figure this out. It's still our child. We will figure it out. We will love this child." And then a series of events happen where it's very clear that well, you don't know for sure, but basically what you get the impression of is there's probably no way that they are going to be able to become the parents this child has had. And that will always be a wall with them. And so Sophie's looking through these books, and she's looking through these photo albums of Riley, the male child, as a child. And my read of it, and you would maybe have a different read, but my thing was she's trying to force herself to connect to this child by going through the child's life, even if it's through photographs, to try to recreate all the attachment she has to her actual child, the female child, because they are this child's parents, and they did this. They made this happen.
Yeah.
And you see her just kind of give up on it, and then she calls Jabir and she calls Mal into a room, and she's like, yeah, this isn't going to work. And then now this is towards the very end of the movie, and this is their discussion on what they're going to do.
What if Jabir saves his family?
You're joking, right?
I was wrong. Before, we're not his parents. His parents are the ones that took him to plays. They played with him and they laughed with him, and his parents held him when he cried and they nursed him when he was sick. We are imposters, and we will only ever disappoint him.
There's got to be another way.
Mal could die.
I know that.
All those stories. Cry so
But
hard.
would he die? He's at the center of the blast, isn't
Picking
he?
up the phone. There ain't nobody to call.
No, keep listening.
I'm not going to do that to you again.
Maybe you don't. Maybe without Jabir, you don't cross the street in that exact moment.
And maybe I still do cross the street at that exact
All
same
I
moment.
know, the only thing I know, is that whatever life we end up with, it'll be the same as our child.
No. Oh, no. Is that even true?
As long as you're not in the room when I use the machine, your memories will align.
And you're on board with this, Jabir?
Yeah, I am.
But you have no idea where you're going to be. You have no idea what your life is going to be like. You'll have no memories of anything.
But my family will be alive.
Maybe. Been 10 years. A lot could have happened.
Then I will have given us more time.
No. We have no idea what's going to happen. The risk is way too high.
Not for our child. Riley needs a parent.
Okay. Okay. Something that we need to do first.
And so they go get into a car and they drive out to the Grand Canyon to see the Grand Canyon, which of course is what they were talking about at the beginning of the movie, because she thinks it's the most beautiful thing and he's never seen it. And so that's
Can
the
I
last...
ask you a question?
Yeah,
out of
go ahead.
curiosity, just
Yeah.
because in the realm of the logic of this movie.
Sure.
If she were to get pregnant by him and then go and turn the machine on and be at the epicenter of the change, would she become unpregnantized?
Would she become no, I don't think that. No, I don't think so. But
I'm
well,
just trying to understand the logic of
if
this.
he
the
died,
rules,
yes. If
yeah.
he didn't die, I guess not, because well, what they specifically talk about is the memories align. So I don't know what because obviously when Jabir does it, he's going to go back to where he was. So the actions, and when they have changed things in the movie up to this point, they instantly change. There's a point where the Mal and the daughter are when Jabir kills the mass shooter with the 22 whatever kids he saved. Mal and they show him in the room about to do it, and they show Jabir, Mal and the daughter are walking down the street, and they stop at a street vendor and they're looking at shirts, and they start to walk again, and the daughter notices something and looks at her dad and says, "Dad, look." And you see Jabir hit the button, and when they turn around, there's nothing there. And then they just keep walking. So their memories were instantly erased. The thing that was there was gone. Only Jabir has the memory of what he did. So I think it would depend on more than just the machine. So I would say probably she would suddenly not be pregnant. But she would know. She would know she wasn't pregnant. She would look down and suddenly she wouldn't have a child. So I would think yes, and she would know why it happened. So in essence, it would be an instantaneous abortion, I guess, or miscarriage, however you want to. So yeah, I think that's what would happen. But in any event, they go to the Grand Canyon, they come back, and Jabir meets up with them and he says, okay, you're sure you want to do this? Because neither of you can make this decision. I have to press the button. I need to know that both of you agree and that this is what you want to do. And they both say yes. And they both say goodbye to him. And they start to walk down the street and they're talking. And essentially they're, she's saying to him, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know when this is going to happen. I'm scared I'm going to lose you again. And he says, and he's the same way. He says, yeah, I'm terrified of losing the person I'm happy with, and I don't know what'll happen. And then she basically says, you know what? It's going to be fine. I'm going to come home. I'm going to open the door. You're going to be there. You're going to be making dinner, and we'll be happy. And so, and then you see them at the corner, and then this camera zooms out, and suddenly they're gone. So obviously Jabir has pressed the button. So then we cut to Sophie comes home from, it looks like she works at the same place because she works in like a nursing home or a retirement home or something. So she's got the same, the nurse clothes on. She gets out the car. She goes up to the door, unlocks the door, and then we cut to inside looking at her coming through the door. She opens the door, looks inside, smiles, and then the camera cuts to white. And that's it. So we don't see what happened.
Oh, fuck you.
Oh, I love that ending. I'm sorry. I think that's great.
I know. Oh, I know, but it's the whole...
But she smiled. So to me, that means...
What do you think happened?
Well, yeah. I think everything went back to the way she thought it would, because the smile gives it away. If she just got up to the door... Here's the thing. For all you know, she still has the boy. She just can't remember the fact that she ever had the girl. So what?
Yeah. No,
that doesn't matter now.
I understand, but I'm just saying the fact that they didn't want to...
No, I think that's good.
That to me is just as bad as the Inception ending.
Oh no! I completely disagree.
No.
Either way,
no, because you know what? You don't know if it's a dream or not. He gets to see his kids. He's happy, but is it a dream or is it not a dream? Well, she smiles at something in the door. For all you know, she's smiling at a dog. She has no husband, no kid, never did. She just got a dog, or she's smiling because her Netflix came in.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, if you want to interpret it that way, you can, but I don't think.
No, but that's what I mean. Is that you're implying a happy ending.
Yes, because that's what the movie has led me to think.
Okay.
That to me is what the movie points at.
The movie you're describing so far does not portray a movie that I trust to give a happy ending.
Well, hey, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. You can see whatever you want in it too. That's the beauty.
You know what? Hold on. I'm really curious now.
Yeah.
If the director
says what it says about the ending.
Sure. What was it called again? It was Aporia. There it was.
AP. Oh yeah, Aporia movie.
I am just curious because sometimes they do that where they're like, "Well, my original idea was that they all die," or something like that.
Oh yeah, here's Aporia ending explained. Let's see. Okay, this is somebody's opinion though.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I was wondering if the director said something.
Does anybody say?
No, it's written and directed by the same guy too.
Yeah. Oh, filmmaker. Okay, hold on. Filmmaker talks about it. Let's see what he says. Does he say anything about the ending? Really came about with the experience becoming a parent. So yeah, I think you would get more out of this than I would in a lot of ways. Because obviously I skipped over a lot of things with the kids, and there is a lot in there. Okay, how did you go about establishing rules? Okay, we don't care about that. I mean, we do, but everybody is actually extraordinarily good in this movie too. I should point that out. They are excellent. Let's see. Do they talk about the ending? Okay.
Yeah, I can't find anything.
Hold on. Wait. Here we go. Let's see. How many different iterations of the ending in particular did you go through in putting this together? Director, quote, "Well, I have about 20 different takes for walking through the door, but I always wanted it to end on a moment where there wasn't a clear answer on the other side, because I don't think it matters what the answer is on the other side. I think what matters is how she's feeling at the moment where she's gone through the journey, and that she's willing to accept whatever is given to her."
But hold on.
Yeah.
How is that not the Inception ending? It doesn't matter if it's a dream or not, because Cobb thinks he's been reunited with his children.
No, well, that's where I differ with you. It matters to me as the viewer. It doesn't matter to him, but I don't care about him. I care about me as the viewer. But hold on.
ending the same?
No, because it's not a dream. So let me.
Yeah, but you don't know if it's a dream.
No, I do know it's not a dream because it's in reality. It is not a dream.
No. But you don't know if Cobb is in a dream or not. He could be reality.
Oh no, I agree. But the fact that I don't know is the thing that bothers me. I like to know some idea of where I am.
So it doesn't matter if he's happy in a dream or not in a dream, or it doesn't matter if he's happy. What matters to you is whether he's in a dream or not.
Yes, that's what matters to me as the viewer.
And so because she is happy in whatever reality she is in, that is good enough for you.
Yes, because so much of the beginning of this movie is her misery over what's going on.
So basically, it's the fact that she is happy in whatever reality, no matter what it is. It doesn't matter. She's happy in her reality.
Yeah.
And doesn't know any better.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yes, she doesn't know any better. She has arrived in whatever form in a life of happiness and no regret over these actions.
So yes. So does it matter what that life is as long as in that time she is happy?
Correct.
Okay. I'm just trying to smooth it out what it is.
And part of that is because Judy Greer is excellent and she is in such pain in the beginning of the movie that any alleviation of that pain, it doesn't matter what form it takes. It's that she is clearly not in the same situation that she started this movie in.
Yeah.
And that is enough.
All right.
So, yeah, that is the difference. I think it's a great movie. The opinions on it are quite diverse.
They're varied. I'm reading
boy,
it.
are
There's
they.
some varied reviews, yeah.
And I think some of it is probably, like you said, that there's people who hate the ending, which if it had stopped on her opening the door and we'd never seen her face, that would bother me. Because then you don't know if it's actually just worse.
Well, no, because the ending to me speaks differently. What that ending to me is, right, is that essentially what happened is you have erased your child. Because you've erased your child, right, as you know it, your child as you know it, you have essentially destroyed your child and you feel awful and you would rather take, in a weird way, that ending is a kind of suicide. You're saying, I can't live with a world without my child, so we're going... Oh, sorry, I heard the camera. Are you still there, right?
Oh, no, I'm here.
Okay, good.
Right.
I can't bear to live in a world where my child no longer exists because of something I've done, so I'm going to reset it, and whatever it is, at least I will be there, and I will no longer exist as I am. I will be fully incorporated to that reality. So it's what she says, the whole line you played about her talking about Boy Riley saying, we will always be imposters. We cannot love this boy because he's not our child. But what you're doing is you are erasing yourselves and you are creating a timeline that no matter what or who that child is, you are the correct parents to be in that situation.
That's it.
So in an interesting way, it is like a mental suicide.
Oh, it absolutely is a destruction of all the lives involved.
Except for the scientist guy.
Well, yes and no. It's a destruction of all the time after the moment where his family was taken. So it is.
But he saves them.
As Mal points out, he may have saved them for only a day, which he's fine with. But yes, in essence, he has stopped. There again, you don't know what the repercussions.
Yeah, you don't know what happens. They never tell you. So for all you know, he saved them for a day. He saved them for a week. For all you know.
Yes. Yeah. Well, the other thing is they never specify what he's doing to stop it, because he had said that thing where if I hadn't been in school that day, so if he killed the guy, he killed the guy who told the people that right. But what if somebody else had also informed a week later and he wasn't in school? He might be dead too. So you don't know. Yeah. That's the larger point. But yes, the crux of the movie is that Sophie realizes that her child is not going to have real parents. She says imposters that will only disappoint him. Yeah. And that they don't have their child anymore, and that it would be better to have parents, in theory, in a best case scenario, of course, parents and children who are in each other's lives fully. If they don't have that, then it's better to be destroyed. Yeah. That's the bottom line of it. So and it's a hard ending, I'll give you that. Yeah. You know what? That's probably why people don't like it, because at the end your main characters kill themselves. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Yeah.
Like that there you go. That right there is the problem, is that people are having a hard time because you're finding the moral line there of the people who say, yeah, I would totally go back to death to save my child or to save that relationship. And you're looking at people going, no, they basically at the end, the parents killed themselves.
Right.
There you go. So yeah, that is a heavy movie.
It is.
Congratulations.
Yeah. But that's why when you were talking about Chrononauts, and I'm like, oh, you want to talk about what your consideration
and
is?
Chrononauts is like completely the other direction.
Sure.
It's the,
Let's skim over the toughness of the decisions to just get to the fun stuff.
It's okay. We're going to abduct this girl and we're going to raise her as our own and we're going to change. And then, and because she's not in the timeline anymore, she can't have that effect because she's in the future now.
Sure. Right.
And honestly, it's very Discovery. It's the whole, we'll take the data to the future where it can't be of any use. And you're like, well, I can't fault your logic in that respect. But yeah.
So I liked it quite a bit.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I give you... we disagree about the perception of the ending, but I do agree that it is a very interesting sounding movie.
Yes, and I at some point it would be interesting if you were to watch it. This is not one where I'm like, oh, you have to watch it, but I would be curious because again, I skip over a lot of things in the movie, and there are lots of parts that are specifically about the child and her, and then the child and the parents, where I think I would be interested if your read of the ending is the same having watched the whole movie. I don't know that it would change. I'm not saying it will, but it might.
No, listen, the ending makes sense to me. It's just sad. It's sad because they destroyed their child, and then realizing that they destroyed their child, they destroyed themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, so
honestly, in that respect, it's pretty straightforward.
Yes, it is. Yeah. But so it was $4 on Amazon. Definitely worth more than $4. Fantastic little movie. Everybody in it is uniformly excellent.
Would you put it on par with Primer?
Oh yeah, it's just a very different type of movie.
Is this like a double feature?
Yes, this one is a lot easier to understand. I'll admit, Primer, when I first watched it, I was lost on what was going on with how far they were traveling. I mean, it was tough to keep up with that. I don't have the brain for it. The second time I watched it, I had a printout of something where somebody explained it, and then it made sense. Like as how many, because they had to go back 6.5 minutes. And if you go back 6.5 minutes, and you have to make sure you're in the machine and out of the machine. It's like, oh, okay, this is much simpler. This is, where do you want me to shoot the particle bullet? Got it. He's dead. Now what changed? It's very easy to follow. This is far easier to follow. But yes, as in terms of the approach and the way that it's trying to be a grounded and realistic idea of what altering time is, yes, then it's a perfect double feature. But this is definitely an easy, let's put it this way. Yeah. I would never sit down and have my wife watch Primer. She would check out very quickly. Very quickly. Whereas this, I think she would really like this. Well, I think she would like it a lot. So,
folks, let's all have a round of applause because whatever you're listening to will be what Joe painstakingly stitched back together.
It won't be that hard. It won't be, assuming that everything recorded, which we seem to think it has, and assuming that there isn't a tremendous amount of glacial drift, which there might not be with this. We'll see. Because we never had choppiness. We just dropped out, which is actually better. Honestly, turbulence is worse for audio drift.
It'll be interesting to see how much of the dead space you keep.
Oh, I'll keep some. I'll cut it down, but I'll keep some. And we got, we're almost at an hour. So I really think that the last one.
We're almost at an hour this time.
But I mean, stable. There's been no choppiness. Yeah. There's been no, and I really think it's because I took my headphones off. I really do think it's the second time. So anyway,
we'll see what happens.
Well, thank you for bearing with all of this stuff, and hopefully we can. If I can get one thing figured out, which I'm just going to go to the Rogue Amoeba people and say, okay, here's what happened. Do you have any idea why you're not hearing the sound effects? And if they could come up with it, then I think we'll just stick with FaceTime, because honestly, that solved all the problems, which is baffling, but whatever, I don't care. So we'll see what we use on the next time, but yeah, whatever. It's amazing that this worked, so I'll take it. And on that note, thank you very much for bearing with all this, and we'll talk to you again next week. Enjoy your weekend. Hopefully your audio troubles, if you have any, are much easier than these. Have a good weekend, everybody. Talk to you next time. Visit OzoneNightmare.com to subscribe to new episodes, browse through our back catalog, or to find links to support the show. Follow @Ozone Nightmare on Twitter for the latest episode postings and other show information. If 280 characters just isn't enough, you can always email us, theozonenightmare@gmail.com. The opening theme for the show is provided by Heartbeat Hero. The closing theme is provided by Ogre. Please visit and support these artists using the links in the show notes for each episode.